Newsletter Essential Politics, Trump boasts of renewal, critics lament it as more of the same. There's a fascinating set of questions that loom large on this day after President Trump's momentous speech in front of a joint session of Congress. Was this what historians will call his most presidential speech so far? And is that the kind of tone Trump's most ardent supporters want? Was it enough to quell his critics? Good morning from the state capitol. I'm Sacramento Bureau Chief John Myers, and here, as in so many places, there's a lot of buzz about what may be the most important glimpse to date of the world as Trump sees it. Rougher edges of Trump's rhetoric. Trump's broad strokes. President Trump sought to rally a divided nation behind his nationalist agenda Tuesday, outlining goals to reform the tax code, overhaul the healthcare system and secure the country in a sweeping speech that was high on ambition but often short on details, writes our team of Noah Bierman, Michael Memole, and Brian Bennett. The president also brought out a new catchphrase, the kind of thing familiar to those who watch these kinds of big speeches: renewal of the American spirit. Trump on immigration. The speech offered no quarter for those who disagree with Trump's promises to expand deportation efforts and build a massive wall along the border with Mexico. We want all Americans to succeed, but that can't happen in an environment of lawless chaos, said the president. We must restore integrity and the rule of law to our borders. Some, too, noticed the pointed comments promoting a merit-based immigration policy, a shift away from the nation's recent history. But perhaps overshadowing all of this was what Trump said hours earlier in a private luncheon with television network news anchors. As Bennett writes, the president offered a viewpoint on immigration that was decidedly less harsh, reportedly telling the group that positions on both sides need to be softened. And yet, there he was hours later, chastising those who he said do not believe we should enforce our laws on immigration. This one's got the potential to be a real live wire in the days and weeks to come. Trump on Obamacare. Few parts of the new era in Washington leadership may prove as vexing in politics and policy as the GOP's promise to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Obamacare is collapsing, Trump said on Tuesday night. But what will, or should, replace it? So far, there's no clear answer from Congress. Set aside all of the politics and, as Noam Levy reports, the various GOP positions all have one thing in common: more costs would be shouldered by healthcare patients. The president laid out a set of principles, as he called them, on what should come next. But even here, there are questions that deserve an answer. Take, for example, what he said about Obamacare's popular ban on denying coverage due to pre-existing health conditions. Trump said, "We should ensure that Americans with pre-existing conditions have access to coverage, but the key word may be access. After all, that doesn't actually guarantee coverage, like the existing law does." Trump on trade. The speech sounded familiar themes on a favorite Trump topic: trade policy crafted with an eye toward a better deal for American workers. "We've lost more than 1/4 of our manufacturing jobs since NAFTA was approved, and we've lost 60,000 factories since China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, he said. Name-checking the North American Free Trade Agreement was notable, given the questions that surround his promises to crack it open. Don Lee reports, in particular, on how Trump's approach could pose serious risks for the auto manufacturing industry and American car buyers. Trump on the economy and jobs. All presidents insist in some way that they not be judged on the record of their predecessor. And as this president sought to make a case for putting the nation back to work, he made an eye-catching claim. 94 million Americans are out of the labor force, Trump said. True? Well, writes David Lauter, only if you're counting retirees and students. Trump on terror and crime. In some of the most forceful parts of his speech, the president renewed his vow to demolish the Islamic State terror organization and to crack down on violent crime in the U.S. He also sounded support for law enforcement officers. "We must build bridges of cooperation and trust, not drive the wedge of disunity and division, Trump said on the need to work with police officers. On terrorism, he again invoked the 2015 mass shooting in San Bernardino. Our obligation is to serve, protect, and defend the citizens of the United States. We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism, the president said. The blend of terror and immigration talk didn't sit well with San Bernardino's representatives in California's congressional delegation. It's just inaccurate and wrong to use San Bernardino as justification for any of the policies that he's rolled out, said Representative Pete Aguilar, D. Redlands. McManus and Decker weigh in. Times columnists Doyle McManus and Kathleen Decker took a close look at the big speech and offered their own key takeaways. For McManus, the speech masked the real trouble Trump's agenda already faces on Capitol Hill. And Decker writes that there was a noticeable shift in tone, but not much of a roadmap for Republicans eager for Trump to lead. Complete speech coverage. Our Times team has extensive coverage of the president's big speech, from an annotated transcript to answers to a few remaining questions. Did the emotional moment for a fallen Navy SEAL offer any pause in the tough questions about the failed mission? Why were Democratic women wearing white? Did Trump's condemnation of threats against Jews ease the anger of those who believe he hasn't said enough? What kinds of early reactions did the speech get among legislators in Sacramento and statewide elected officials? And full coverage, as always, will keep coming in at our essential Washington news feed. Trump takes aim at Obama water rule. Meantime, the president continues his march toward reversing course on a number of significant actions taken by President Barack Obama. On Tuesday, it was what's known as the Waters of the United States rule. Trump ordered the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to begin undoing the regulation, invoking the idea that the effort was a jobs killer. It is such a horrible, horrible rule, the president said on Tuesday. Intelligence nominee says he'll have an eye on Russia. Trump's nominee to be the next National Intelligence Director told senators on Tuesday that he understands the concerns about Russian interference in last November's presidential election. Former Senator Dan Coats said in his confirmation hearing that the United States must have its eyes wide open when it comes to Russia's actions and intentions. Coats is widely expected to win confirmation easily. The key, of course, is whether he will see eye to eye with his soon-to-be boss. A Texas swing in a big voting rights case. Another example of the sharp shift from the Obama to Trump administrations appeared on Monday, this one the latest chapter in legal battles over a voter ID law enacted in Texas. No longer will federal prosecutors, working under U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, assert that Texas state lawmakers intentionally sought to hurt minority voters. The shift by the U.S. Department of Justice, revealed through a Monday court filing, means that civil rights groups have lost a powerful ally in their effort to have the Texas law fully blocked. Sessions on violent crime. And speaking of the Attorney General, he promised in a speech on Tuesday to crack down on violent crime, calling this a pivotal time. Sessions was speaking to attorneys general from around the nation who were gathered in Washington and was focused on recent crime data that stands in contrast to longer-term information showing a decidedly downward trend. "I'm afraid it represents the beginning of a trend," Sessions said about the more recent reports. Police proposals fizzle in Sacramento. There were a number of closely watched, high-profile efforts in Sacramento last year to impose new transparency rules for the public to see disciplinary actions taken against law enforcement officers. That, though, was last year. This time around, civil rights groups have found no lawmakers willing to champion the issue. One sign, writes Liam Dillon, of the substantial influence law enforcement groups hold in the state capitol. Anti-poverty warrior will help shape California's budget. State Senator Holly Mitchell, D. Los Angeles, has made a name for herself by being a dogged crusader for the poor, even if that involves calling out fellow Democrats. Mitchell leveraged her role as her party's moral conscience to become the powerful chair of the Senate's Budget Committee. Melanie Mason takes a closer look at how the new role poses a unique challenge. As her capital clout grows, can Holly Mitchell still be Holly Mitchell? Holly Mitchell?